Salama family, this is Brother Yahuwah Yashar'al. Today's discussion is on Bantu tribes that do not circumcise, their traditions, origins, and way of life. Welcome, and I hope you'll be edified and will learn, relearn, and unlearn. I will be basing this discussion on biblical context as well as historical context. I will start with the biblical context. We'll have to look at the Abrahamic covenant as well as the Mosaic law. Abrahamic covenant. The practice of circumcision was first established as an everlasting covenant between Yahuwah and Abraham, as we can see in Genesis chapter 17, 10 to 11, 17, 12, and 17, 14. And I'll quote Genesis 17, 10, 11. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you, and your seed after you. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. Genesis 17:12 specifies the timing, and he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. Genesis 17:14 warns of the consequence for non-compliance. I quote, "And the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." We also look at the Mosaic law. Circumcision was later enforced as a legal requirement within the laws given to Moses by Yahuwah. So Leviticus 12 verse 13, "And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised." Exodus 12:48 establishes circumcision as a prerequisite for participating in sacred rituals like Passover. So I quote, "And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to Yahuwah, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it." I will dive in straight to historical context. We look at Eastern African Bantus, Southern African Bantus, Central and Western Bantu groups. So whilst the majority of Bantu-speaking groups traditionally practice male circumcision as the rite of passage into adulthood, there is also a significant belt and number of Bantu nations in Central, Eastern, Southern, West Africa that have never adopted or historically abandoned this rite. We'll start with East African Bantu. The Baganda, which is the largest ethnic group in Uganda, do not traditionally practice circumcision. Same with the Basoga, the Banyankole, Bachiga, Banyoro. We'll also look at the Luo, though not Non-Bantu. We'll look at them in another context, in another video. Southern Africa Bantus, the Zulu, the Swazi, the Ndebele, the Tsonga. Central and West African Bantu groups, the Bemba, the Chewa, and of course the Ovimbundu from Angola. This is the table summarizing what we've just discussed. For West Central Africa, I have just added the Douala, the Bassa, and the Bubi. We'll quickly look at the reasons for non-circumcision. Number one, for instance, the Zulu, it was about military expediency. The Shaka Zulu reformed the rites of circumcision from the Zulu nation in the 1800s because he believed that the period it took for the initiates to heal was too long, and he required these men for military purposes. For the Baganda, it was another reason altogether. They really emphasized on the wholeness of a man, and they believed physical mutilation, including circumcision, would damage this, and they required physical perfection, especially to serve in kingship or Kabaka's office. There is also alternative rites of passage. For instance, learning the mysteries of the tribe, for instance, for the Bemba and Chewa, was considered more important than circumcision. There was also migration and Bantu splitting. Their intermarriages and mixings with Cushitic and Nilotic peoples made them change or adopt circumcision from these groups. Also, finally, the influence of traditional religions, which was very key in shaping circumcision and uncircumcision practices amongst these Bantu groups. This is the summary of the cultural logic that we've seen earlier on. So I'll jump straight to ancestor traditions. We shall quickly look at major Bantu tribes like the Zulu in South Africa. The Zulu communicate with ancestors through dreams and ritual slaughter of cattle up to today, and they really believe in ancestor worship. Amadlozi. The Shona from Zimbabwe, they believe in Vadzimu, central to Shona life, the Bira ceremonies, and I had told you family earlier that some bit of Shona belong to the Elamite peoples. Some are Bantu Israelites. So it's always good to learn and know that we have diverse groups within and amongst us. The Congo from the DRC Angola regions, they believe in the Bakulu, the mirror of the living world separated by a body of water. They believe in ancestor worship. The Baganda on the Mizimu. Ancestors were honored at private family shrines. Ebija, the spirits of past kings, Bakasaga, are considered a national guardians. So we got in trouble with Yahuwah because of these practices when we left Torah, and majority of these tribes that are majorly Israelites have left these practices and have gone to practicing things that do not align with Yahuwah's Torah and word. We'll also look at witchcraft. So there is a lot of African traditional religion, social logic believing in witchcraft. And in many Bantu cultures, people don't just how something happened, they ask why it happened. And this is normally tied to a spiritual cause. As you can read in this article that I have put here, they believed there was an evil eye, and witchcraft was brought through envy, jealousy, and anger. And of course, they believed in the dual nature of power, the medicine and malice, the Mugangas, the Sangoma, especially in major tribes amongst the Bantus. They also believed in vital forces of Yahuwah, of God, they used to say, as well as nature, which is force. And it is a common misconception that most Bantu people are actively trying to cast spells. In reality, the vast majority of the population are the clients of traditional healers seeking protection, luck, charms on health, much like someone in the West using therapy, insurance, and prayer. Only that, majority of these practices are tied to ancestor worship, which brings witchcraft in the long run and has really alienated us with our God, Yahuwah, and Yahusha was sent to redeem us back into this covenant family. So we look at the origins of the Bantu. So we have the normal belief that the Bantu migrated from the Niger, Cameroon, Congo regions into their present lands. But you also notice that we also have the Ethiopian North origin mystery legends for the Kikuyu, Meru, and Baganda Bantu groups in East Africa, which is also true. We also saw in our earlier video of coastal Bantus that migrated from Shungwaya. And you can see I have added this here for context. So, family, we need to unlearn a lot of teachings taught to us by Muzungus, classifying and lumping people just because of language classifications, and not bothering, especially on our origins, especially before slavery and before the 17th century. So, in conclusion, the final takeaway of this matter, the matter of the Bantu is not just a study of history or DNA. It is a study of resilience. Despite upheavals of migration, the scars of the slave trade, and the pressures of colonization, the Bantu identity did not break, it expanded. It absorbed new ideas, integrated with other cultures, and emerged as one of the most successful and widespread cultural identities in human history. In the streets of Kinshasa, Congo, the boardrooms of Gaborone, Botswana, and the markets of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, the ancient echoes of the Proto-Bantu pioneers still ring out. There are people who define themselves not by where they stopped, but by how far they have traveled together. This Ubuntu spirit has kept these groups together, but it is also important to note that because of intermarriages, because of many other factors, we have Israelite Bantus, non-Israelite Bantus, Elamites, Edomites amongst the Bantus as well. I have brought out this discussion today to bring out a few issues in terms of culture, tradition, origins, as well as ancestor traditions to help us identify where we went wrong. And this awakening is proof of how Yahweh is collecting his people from all over the world into his covenant before the second coming of Yahusha. And again, it is also important that the land that was promised to Abraham, this is south of Egypt according to Genesis 13, verse 1, is all the way from Ethiopia to South Africa to West Africa, where majority of the Israelite populations are today and will be gathered from. Thank you, family, and have a good afternoon. Bye bye.